The afternoon seems harmless, but could it be when your brain is quietly losing pressure? Why is it that every afternoon I feel tired, sluggish, like my mind just isn't sharp anymore? Why do I speak more slowly, can't remember what I was about to do, even though I was so clear just this morning? And then, you comfort yourself with a familiar line, maybe it's just old age. I've heard that sentence thousands of times. And I've seen far too many people accept it quietly, gently, almost with resignation. But as someone who has worked with older adults' brains for over 30 years, I no longer believe in those two words, just aging. Because there's something else more subtle, more dangerous quietly happening each afternoon, and most people don't know it at all. I want you to imagine this: your brain in the morning is like a powerful general. But by around 3 p.m., it becomes like a hungry, sleepy child, waiting for a small gesture to keep going. No one teaches us to nourish the brain in the afternoon. We eat breakfast for energy, lunch to feel full, dinner to gather, but no one talks about that 3 p.m. moment when the brain starts to drop in pressure. And what worries me the most is, so many people begin to lose their clarity at the end of the day, simply because they ignore that brief window day after day. So if this afternoon you once again find yourself frozen in the kitchen, unable to remember what you were looking for, or just sitting quietly by the window feeling like your head is wrapped in fog, please don't rush to blame aging. Your brain might be speaking up very softly that it's hungry. Not for rice, not for meat, but for something most of us have never paid attention to: timely energy for memory and mental clarity. Let me tell you the story of Mr. Walter, a man I deeply admire who used to think he was fine, still sharp, but didn't know that each afternoon, a part of his brain was slowly dimming, bit by bit. Every afternoon I slowed down a bit, but no one warned me it could be the first sign of a weakening brain. Mr. Walter is 68 years old, living alone in a small apartment in Denver. He still drives himself to the store, reads the newspaper every morning, and has never had major memory issues. On the outside, he's the image of a healthy older adult. Until his third appointment with me, when he quietly said, "Doctor, I feel something strange every afternoon." I asked, "Strange how?" He replied, "Not tired like after working, but like my head gets heavy. Like it's filled with fog. I can see far just fine, but up close I blink a lot. I talk slower. And sometimes, I forget what I was about to do next." I looked at him and took a slow breath. I've heard those words from hundreds of people, and most of them simply think, maybe I really am getting old. But as someone who monitors brain function every day, I know that's not just aging. It's a small signal from the central nervous system losing its stability. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't come with clear confusion. It just pulls you down like an undercurrent, silently sweeping away your clarity, every single afternoon. I call it the first crack in brain energy. A crack you can't see with your eyes, can't measure with a thermometer, but strong enough that when you're about to call your child, you end up looking for the phone without remembering where you put it. When you're about to do something simple, you just sit there, hesitating, like something's holding you back inside your head. And the painful part is most people live with that crack every day, without anyone ever telling them, that's something you can actually improve. I still remember Mr. Walter gave a soft laugh and said, "Maybe it's just because I eat less. Lunch is late, so I'm a bit drained in the afternoon." But no, it's not that simple. Because just 2 weeks later, another patient of mine much stronger than Mr. Walter collapsed right outside his front door, on an afternoon just like that. What happened that afternoon? And why did I start telling all my older patients one important thing: never ignore the 3 p.m. moment? We'll get to that part right after this. Why do so many strokes happen in the afternoon? And why do so few people notice the early warning signs? I know what you might be thinking: serious things must happen at night, when the body is tired, that's when it gets dangerous. But no, one of the times I worry most about older adults is actually 3 p.m. I've witnessed this many times. And there's one afternoon I'll never forget. Mr. Henry, 71 years old, living in the suburbs of Texas. A cheerful man, loved gardening, and had absolutely no history of heart problems or strokes. That morning, he went to the market, watered his plants, and even called a friend to share a joke. Lunch was light, just a small sandwich and water. Then he rested, lying down and reading under the porch. But around 4:55 p.m., his wife heard a loud thump outside. She ran out and saw him on the ground, holding his phone loosely, eyes wide open but unable to speak. Just 15 minutes later, he was rushed to the hospital. Diagnosis: minor stroke due to low glucose combined with temporary increased intracranial pressure. As you can see, there were no clear warning signs. No severe headache. No heavy medical history. Just a quiet afternoon and a small slip, but enough to push the brain beyond its limit. I still remember his brain scan that day. No major damage, but there was one area. Like it had lost power temporarily right where memory and speech are processed. Like a flickering light bulb from weak electricity. And the cause? Not illness. Not age. But missing a small, timely snack. That was when I truly understood, 3 p.m. is not dead time. It's a physiological curve where your brain needs a boost to reach the finish line safely. Why 3 p.m.? Because a few hours after lunch, insulin levels drop, and glucose starts to fall. Cortisol, the hormone that keeps you alert, also dips. If there's no energy added, regions like the hippocampus, which controls memory, and the prefrontal cortex for language and response, are the first to be affected. I often tell my patients this: you think you're driving a car that's running fine. But if you hit a steep hill while running out of gas, it only takes a small slip, and the car veers off course. The good news is, we can absolutely refuel the brain at the right time in the right way. No medication needed. You just need to know what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat so your brain doesn't crash in the afternoon. In the next section, I'll explain clearly why a banana or a handful of almonds at exactly 3 p.m. can save the memory center of your brain. You'll never look at afternoon snacks the same way again. In the afternoon, the brain doesn't sleep, but it's out of battery. And you're the only one who can recharge it in time. There's something most people don't notice: your brain doesn't have an energy reserve like your heart or liver. It works all day long, yet relies entirely on the fuel flowing through your blood, from what you eat. And then around 3 p.m., a few hours after lunch, your body enters a special physiological shift. Insulin levels, which slightly increased after lunch, now begin to drop. Blood glucose, the brain's only gasoline, also dips slowly. Cortisol, the hormone that keeps you alert, declines with the cycle. What's the result? Your brain starts to get hungry, but it doesn't scream. It simply lowers its performance bit by bit. First is the hippocampus, where short-term memories are stored. You begin to forget what you were about to say. You stumble mid-story, losing your train of thought. Next is the prefrontal cortex, the area that governs speech, decision-making, and social responses. You feel yourself speaking more slowly. Your reactions slow down. You can't seem to focus, even during a short conversation. I often compare the afternoon brain to a house with low battery. You haven't lost power entirely, but the lights grow dim, the Wi-Fi flickers, the fan spins slower, and everything feels strangely heavy. Do you understand what I'm saying? This isn't a sign of aging. It's a physiological fork in the road, and you can steer it. Just a little fuel, at the right time, in the right form, your brain will light up again. And the amazing part is, we don't need medication. We just need a small afternoon snack at exactly 3 p.m. I'll show you how to do that. Not complicated. Not fussy. No need for expensive supplements. You only need to understand what your brain needs in the afternoon, and you'll know how to help it stay sharp as gently as a tap on the shoulder. In the next section, I'll share simple snack options that can stabilize pressure inside the brain, keep your clarity, and help prevent memory decline over time. We'll call it a loving shot for your brain at 3 p.m. and I hope you never miss it again. A banana at the right time is worth more than a brain supplement taken too late. I know, for many people, the phrase afternoon snack doesn't sound important. Some skip it because they're afraid of gaining weight. Some don't feel the need, thinking I'm not that hungry. But I want you to try seeing it a little differently. Imagine you're driving a car on a mountain road in the afternoon. There's still gas in the tank, but the gauge shows just 1 bar left. You don't stop to refuel, thinking you can go a few more miles. And then, at the sharpest curve, the car sputters. The engine weakens. The steering loosens. And you feel out of control for a few seconds. That's what your brain is like around 3 p.m. Not empty, but at a low enough energy level to slow it down, cause slight confusion, and make it vulnerable to any extra pressure. That's why I always tell my patients, take just 5 minutes, right at 3 p.m., to inject a gentle dose of love into your brain. No need for a big meal. No need to sit at a table. Just fuel it with the right type of food the brain can absorb quickly, safely, and effectively. Here are 3 simple suggestions you can try starting today. 1 ripe banana and 5, 7 almonds. Banana provides natural glucose, helping to restore energy to the cortex. Almonds add magnesium and healthy fats, supporting steady neurotransmission. A slice of whole grain bread and 1 spoon of unsweetened peanut butter. Whole grain bread helps maintain stable glucose. Peanut butter helps the brain stay alert without sudden insulin spikes. Warm unsweetened nut milk and 1 kiwi or half a small apple offers fiber, vitamin C, and antioxidants, protecting the brain's small blood vessels. And most importantly, do not drink strong tea or coffee after 3 p.m. because caffeine at that time gives you a false alertness but actually causes the brain to lose balance by nighttime. If possible, prepare the snack in the morning, pre-pack it in a small container, and set a phone reminder to alert you on time, like a little ritual just for your brain. Just 5 minutes. But you'll be giving yourself a more alert late afternoon, a gentler evening, and a longer lasting memory. I've seen many people follow this snack routine and show clear improvement. But there's one man who touched me the most. An elderly gentleman who used to lie down every afternoon, not talking, not reading the paper, just sighing quietly. After 2 weeks of following the 3 p.m. for the brain ritual, he sat up, told old stories to his grandchild, and said a sentence I'll never forget: "I got my afternoons back." In the next section, I'll share his story with you. Because sometimes, rebirth doesn't start in a hospital but from a small snack, at the right time. And from the heart. I no longer lie lifeless every afternoon. I've reclaimed my afternoons. I met Mr. Malcolm on an autumn afternoon last year, when his daughter brought him to my clinic. He was 73, living in Michigan. His memory was still good, blood pressure under control, no signs of dementia. But his daughter was worried because he was speaking less and less every afternoon. No chatting. No reading the paper. No going out to the yard like he used to. Just sitting still in a chair, or lying down, eyes staring far away as if nothing mattered anymore. I asked him, "How do you feel between 3 and 5 p.m.? He looked at me, then said slowly, "I'm not tired. I just don't want to do anything. My head feels heavier. Not pain. But like I'm drifting away from the day itself." I heard that and fell silent. Because I knew he wasn't the first to describe it exactly like that. And I also knew if we didn't act early, his brain might be sliding into a state of micro-decline, not loud, not obvious, but enough to disconnect him from life each afternoon. Instead of prescribing medication, I invited him to try something. Very small. Very gentle. I said, "Could you help me with something? At exactly 3 p.m. every day, have a light snack just as I'll guide, nothing else. Don't try to do anything more. Just eat, then sit there, and wait to see what happens." Mr. Malcolm smiled. He nodded. And his daughter prepared everything carefully, a small box with 6 almonds, 1 ripe banana, a cup of warm nut milk. A phone alarm rang at 3 p.m. every day, the signal for brain time. Week 1, not much change. Week 2, he started going back to the garden. Week 3, he sat and told old stories to his grandchild, rereading poems he once wrote in his youth. And by week 4 he looked at me, eyes gently brightened, and said, "I no longer lie lifeless. I've reclaimed my afternoons." You know, sometimes we think something inside us is slowly dying, but really, it's just waiting for us to listen at the right moment. And the brain, always the quietest organ, is also the easiest to revive, if you give it a chance at the right time. I've walked alongside hundreds like Mr. Malcolm. And every time I see them come back to life in the late afternoon, I quietly remind myself, say this sooner to those who are staying silent. Because sometimes, older adults silently endure that foggy, sluggish feeling, never speaking of it as if it's just something they must accept with age. But no. Let me whisper this to you from the heart of a doctor who has witnessed both rebirth and regret. 3 p.m. is not just a moment, it can be the beginning of a part of life you thought had faded. In the next section, I want to pause with you for a bit to share something I always carry in my heart. After each visit, each emergency, and every pair of eyes that looked at me and sighed, I wish I had known this sooner. I once lost a patient just because he thought I'm probably just tired. I remember his eyes clearly. He wasn't in pain. Didn't complain. Just sat in front of me, silent for a moment, then said, "Every afternoon I feel a bit lightheaded. It's nothing, probably just not sleeping enough." And I believed him. Because at that time, all his numbers were within range. I saw no reason to raise alarms, except to suggest he rest more. We shared a quiet laugh, he shook my hand firmly, then went home. 3 days later, I heard he was admitted to the hospital with a minor stroke in the frontal lobe. Luckily, he didn't lose his ability to speak, but from that day on, he was no longer himself. Still able to walk. But he didn't smile anymore. Didn't tell old stories anymore. Just looked at his family and nodded as if everything around him was turning into a distant echo. I blamed myself for a long time. Because when someone says just a little dizzy, sometimes that's how they're hiding something much bigger going on inside. From that day on, I started asking every older patient of mine a very different question: how do you feel around 3 p.m.? Not in the morning, not at night. But that exact moment when many begin to go quiet, withdraw from conversation, sit silently by the window with a faraway gaze. I'm not telling you this to worry you. But because I've seen what you can save if you listen at the right time. Have you ever felt your body calling your name and you didn't notice? A strange wave of sleepiness. A slightly faster heartbeat. One moment where you forget what you were about to say. You call it aging. I call it the brain's whisper. And if you pause for a few seconds, place your hand on your chest, then look into the late afternoon sun, I believe you'll feel it. Your body is not aging. It's asking you to love it again on time, in the right way. I say this to you, because I know you're deep enough to feel it. You don't need more medication. You don't need anyone to push you. You just need to know, you are not alone in those quiet afternoons. In the next section, I'd like to invite you to take one more step from someone who listens, to someone who can share what you've just come to understand with others. Because perhaps, a 60-year-old friend of yours is also sitting alone this afternoon, thinking, maybe I'm just getting old. You are not weak, you just haven't loved your brain at the right time. I know. Some people live among children, among friends, yet still feel like they're living alone. Not because no one is around, but because there are empty spaces inside them that no one knows how to reach. And those empty spaces often grow wider each afternoon. Around 3 to 5 p.m. the light outside the window softens, but inside, things grow heavier. Sometimes not clearly. No name to it. Just a still feeling, a slowed heartbeat, a quieted stream of thought no one notices. Have you ever felt that way? Sat down, thought about calling someone then didn't. Looked out into the garden, saw the sun slanting but didn't want to do anything. Not because you're sad. Not because you're weak. But simply because your brain needs a little more love. I've seen those afternoons in the eyes of hundreds of people. The man sitting on the porch, staring into nothing, the woman washing dishes slowly, as if she didn't want the day to end, and the elders who sit so quietly, but feel so empty inside. I've learned one thing, after all these years in this profession, no one should go through the afternoon alone. Not just in the house but in their own mind. If you're listening to me right now, and feel like something inside you has just been touched, hold on to this moment for yourself. You don't need to do anything. Just remember, starting today, you've begun to listen to your brain at the right time. And if you know someone, a friend, a loved one, or simply an older person you often see in the mornings, they too might be passing through quiet afternoons just like the ones you once had. Please share with them what you've just come to understand. You don't need to say much. No long explanations. Just one sentence, like a warm little reminder. This afternoon, remember to eat a little something for your brain. Because sometimes, the only thing someone needs to feel alive is the sense that they're still being thought of. I won't say much more. I know you might be tired. But before we close this video, I want to leave you with one sentence, just one that I often whisper in my mind whenever I see someone quietly drifting through the afternoon. Every afternoon is a chance to feel fully alive once again. Don't forget the afternoon, don't forget yourself. And if you're still here, walk with me one last stretch. We'll close this journey together with a deep breath. And one final sentence that I believe you'll carry with you long after the screen fades. A small meal at the right time could preserve your memory, clarity, and peace of mind. We've just walked together through what may seem like a very small journey, just about one afternoon and one snack. But as you've seen, when we look deep enough, when we listen closely enough, we realize it's the smallest things that shape our entire emotional life after 60. Now you know, 3 p.m. isn't just an ordinary moment. It's when your brain enters a natural low-pressure zone where memory starts to slow, speech becomes fragmented, and alertness fades unless it's gently refueled. You've heard the story of Mr. Walter, who thought he was just a little tired with age, then Mr. Henry, who collapsed right at his front gate from skipping a light meal. And finally, Mr. Malcolm, who brought life back to his afternoons with just a banana, a few almonds, and a gentle reminder from his own body. You've also come to understand. No medications. No major interventions. You only need to remember that your brain deserves to be loved at the right time. And that time is 3 p.m. each day. So, if today you feel like you've learned something new, or simply feel understood, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, or share it with someone over 60 who might need to hear this message too. You can also subscribe to the channel Thrive 60 Plus, so we can meet again in more healing stories, in small, simple guides that help you stay clear-headed, at peace, and full of life after 60. And finally, please carry this sentence with you: every afternoon is a chance to feel fully alive once again. Don't forget the afternoon, don't forget yourself. See you again in a calmer, softer, and more vibrant afternoon.